December 1939. British newspapers buzz with one mystery. Where is the Altmark? After the Royal Navy's victory over the German cruiser Graf Spee at the River Plate, the British now hunt its supply ship, the Altmark. They aim to free 299 British captives aboard, but the vessel slips back to Europe and enters Norwegian waters en route to Germany. Norwegian officials inspect it 3 times and permit passage, yet the British step in. They intercept the Altmark against Norway's wishes, storm the ship, and free the prisoners. The Altmark incident drags Norway into the crisis it had hoped to avoid. Both Britain and Germany accuse the neutral nation of siding with the enemy, and each fears the other will seize the country. Norway's neutrality is about to vanish in smoke. In September 1939, neither Britain and France nor Germany give much attention to Norway, though both expect it to side with the Allies. Norway, however, proclaims neutrality, and Foreign Minister Halvdan Koht hopes cautious diplomacy will keep it out of the war. Yet Norway still matters. Germany imports 22 million tons of iron ore yearly, 9 million of which come from Sweden. During winter, the only route lies through the Norwegian port of Narvik, a vulnerability Britain seizes upon. Complete stoppage of Swedish exports of iron ore to Germany would, barring unpredictable developments, end the war in a few months. R26. Britain weighs options: laying mines, blockading, or occupying northern Norway and the Swedish ore fields. At first, Britain requests Norway's permission to land troops, but Oslo refuses. Koht fears British action will spark a German military response and struggles to resist British demands. Politically, ideologically, nationally, and personally, my affinity, as well as that of the nation, rested with the Allies. Still, the British had a demanding attitude, difficult to accept, and continually forced their issues on us instead of negotiating amicably. R19. Meanwhile, the winter war between Finland and the Soviet Union offers Britain and France a convenient excuse. They draw up occupation plans under the guise of aiding Finland, but abandon them once that war ends in March 1940. With no better options left, some, notably First Lord of the Admiralty Winston Churchill, urge mining Norwegian waters and German rivers. Expecting retaliation, London readies Plan R4 for a rapid occupation of northern Norway. France hesitates, but soon agrees, reasoning that a German attack on Norway might ease pressure on the Western Front. By early April 1940, British forces in Scotland prepare to land at 3 Norwegian coastal sites once the mine-laying begins. But before they can act, Germany strikes first. Germany, too, worries about the Narvik supply route and suspects Norway might yield to British diplomatic pressure, a fear magnified by Vidkun Quisling, leader of Norway's fascist National Samling. In meetings with Hitler, he exaggerates the threat of an Anglo-Norwegian alliance and begs for help to stage a National Socialist coup. Hitler declines, as the German Foreign Ministry and many generals distrust Quisling's influence. Germany's motives extend further. Beyond blocking British moves, it seeks control of Norway's coast to enhance naval flexibility. In January 1940, Hitler orders plans for Operation Weserübung. Under General Nicholas von Falkenhorst, German strategists work in secrecy, emphasizing audacity. Hitler considered Operation Weserübung to be particularly daring. In fact, one of the rashest undertakings in modern warfare. Precisely that would ensure its success. He described the anxiety he would feel until victory as among the greatest nervous strains of his life. Maudsley 33. Accelerated by the Altmark affair. The plan deploys 8,150 troops by sea and 3,500 paratroopers to seize key ports, cities, and airfields in a surprise landing. The Germans will present their arrival as preempting a British invasion, but are ordered to use all available force against any resistance. After taking Oslo, they expect King Haakon VII to surrender and legitimize their occupation. To secure supply lines, German troops will also invade Denmark. Not everyone in Germany's military is keen. The plan comes from a small group reporting directly to the Wehrmacht High Command, bypassing the Army, Navy, and Air Force. Luftwaffe officers resent exclusion. Some army leaders oppose using troops intended for the French invasion. The Navy supports the idea but fears strong British opposition at sea. With intelligence suggesting imminent British moves into Norway, Hitler sets Weserübung for April 9th. As British troops begin boarding ships for R4, German warships already steam into the North Sea. Both Britain and Norway receive early warnings. On April 8th, a Polish submarine sinks a German merchant ship carrying troops and invasion supplies bound for Norway. The Norwegian Navy alerts Oslo to a possible invasion force, but the government remains preoccupied with reports of British mine-laying. British naval intelligence also detects large German fleet movements, but mistakes them for a breakout into the North Sea. This belief is strengthened when the destroyer HMS Glowworm encounters a German group led by the heavy cruiser Admiral Hipper. In an uneven fight, Hipper sinks Glowworm, though not before the smaller ship rams and badly damages the cruiser. The British cancel Operation R4 and only now grasp that the German capital ships were shielding an invasion fleet. As 6 German naval groups push toward their targets, their main worries are minefields and Norwegian coastal batteries. On paper, Norway's defenses seem formidable, yet in practice they are hollow. Mines remain unlaid, gun crews are short of training and ammunition. When the first German troops land early on April 9th, chaos follows. Some Norwegian patrol boats fire at the invaders, but resistance is scattered and uncoordinated. In many areas, German ships slip past the forts before alarms are even raised. Oslo, however, is different. The Norwegians detect incoming warships, led by the heavy cruiser Blücher, though their identity is uncertain. The city's defenses center on Oscarborg Fortress, armed with 28 semi-petiter Krupp guns and underwater torpedo tubes. Most nearby forts stand unmanned, but Commander Oberst Birger Eriksen orders fire on the intruders regardless of nationality. Meanwhile, Blücher's captain Heinrich Voldog assumes the Norwegians will not shoot. At 04:20 a.m., Blücher leads the column into the Oslo Fjord as smaller vessels land troops along the coast. Oscarborg's guns open fire, disabling the cruiser's anti-aircraft control and killing scores of soldiers ready to disembark. Guns from the Kopos and Husvik forts join in. Unready for combat and packed with men, Blücher responds sluggishly. Sonderführer Behrens later recalled, "It was not possible from below to distinguish between hits and our own fire. Suddenly the cruiser shook violently and swung sideways. The engine stopped, lights went out. Emergency lighting came on soon after. Nobody could tell what had happened." Har 135. 2 torpedoes from Oscarborg strike home, detonating ammunition stores. Flames spread, and Voldag orders the ship abandoned. Panic breaks out as untrained troops flee, leaving bulkheads open and worsening flooding. As Blücher sinks, the fortress guns target the heavy cruiser Lützow, forcing her to withdraw. Oslo's defense is short-lived. After an air clash between German Me-110s and Norwegian Gloucester Gladiators, German paratroopers seize Fornebu Airport and advance on the capital. Capturing it by 2 p.m., 21-year-old Gunnar Sundsteby later recalled seeing German troops in the streets on his way to work. "Everyone I met was as stupefied as me." Holland 188. The brief stand, however, buys time for King Haakon VII, the government, and much of Norway's gold reserves to escape. By midday on April 9th, Operation Weserübung appears a success. Germany occupies Narvik, Trondheim, Bergen, Stavanger, Kristiansand, and Oslo with minimal resistance. Simultaneously, German troops overrun Denmark, whose government capitulates by 6 a.m. after scattered resistance. Germany demands Norway surrender on the same terms as Denmark, claiming to have preempted a British invasion. Berlin assures Haakon he may remain king if he cooperates. Before he can reply, political turmoil erupts in Oslo. Vidkun Quisling, shocked by the invasion himself, declares a new government, Norwegian men and women. "England has violated our neutrality. The German government has offered its help. The government has fled. Under these circumstances, it is the duty and right of the National Samling movement to assume power. All Norwegians are hereby called upon to keep the peace." Petrau 72. At first, Berlin ignores him, but Hitler soon sees Quisling's usefulness and endorses his statement. For King Haakon, surrender now means accepting Quisling as prime minister. In Elverum, north of Oslo, he tells his ministers, "My position is clear. I cannot accept the German demands." I have examined my conscience and find I cannot appoint Quisling Prime Minister, a man in whom neither our people nor their representatives have any confidence. Petrau 75. Though Norway's resistance is fragmented, it begins to stiffen. Even before the king's declaration, troops under Colonel Otto Ruge repel a German attack on Elverum. Promoted to commander-in-chief, Ruge orders a strategic withdrawal toward Trondheim, anticipating Allied assistance, while German units push north to join their forces. For Britain, Narvik becomes a critical target. Once London grasps German intentions, Royal Navy vessels race north. German troops had seized Narvik quickly on April 8th, crucial since 10 destroyers in the invasion fleet were to refuel and return to Germany before the Royal Navy trapped them. But only one tanker arrived on time, delaying refueling. Early on April 10th, 5 British destroyers blocked the fjord's mouth. Their commander, Captain Bernard Warburton Lee, knows he is outnumbered yet presses the attack, counting on surprise. Advancing through poor weather, his ships evade U-boats and strike the unready German flotilla. At 4:30 a.m., British torpedoes hit the flagship Wilhelm Heidkamp, killing the flotilla commander. Repeated British attacks sink the Anton Schmidt and cripple 3 other destroyers. As they withdraw, 2 German destroyers, Georg Thiel and Bernd von Arnim, ambush them at close range, fatally damaging HMS Hardy and mortally wounding Warburton Lee. The Hardy runs aground but keeps firing. The Germans then target HMS Hunter, which collides with HMS Hotspur and sinks with heavy losses. Both sides retreat. Losses are roughly equal, but the Germans remain trapped at Narvik with only 2 serviceable destroyers and more British ships inbound. On April 13th, 9 fresh British destroyers, led by the battleship HMS Warspite, enter the fjord. German vessels, low on fuel and ammunition, rely on U-boats for protection. 4 torpedo attacks against Warspite fail when every torpedo malfunctions. Warspite and her escorts press the attack, driving the crippled German fleet into a narrow fjord beyond her reach. British destroyers pursue and both sides exchange gunfire and torpedoes. German gunnery proves more accurate, but with no escape route. Several German destroyers expend their ammunition and beach themselves along the fjord. The destroyer Eric Gisa, however, charges directly at HMS Punjabi and HMS Bedouin, forcing Punjabi to fall back. At point-blank range, Bedouin turns Gisi into a blazing wreck that later sinks in Narvik harbor. Its captain faces reality with grim resolve. The proper duty of an officer and soldier is to inflict as much damage on the enemy as possible. We had about 10 minutes worth of ammunition in all torpedoes, so we could fight. But I had no hope that we would ever reach port again. Har 364. The last 2 German destroyers, Georg Thiele and Hans Ludemann, attempt an ambush with their remaining torpedoes, one of which strikes HMS Eskimo. Out of ammunition, both ships run themselves aground as HMS Hero and HMS Icarus close in and shell the wrecks. By the evening of April 13th, all 10 German destroyers at Narvik lie sunk, yet the British do not immediately land troops, even though most German army units have already left Narvik. The Allies only begin counter-landings around Narvik and Trondheim on April 16th, too late for General Otto Ruge, who has been retreating since April 11th, as German forces push Norwegian troops back in every direction. The Norwegians fight mainly to delay, avoiding entrapment against German armor and motorized infantry. When British troops finally reach Rug near Lillehammer, he is dismayed. The soldiers are inexperienced and poorly supplied, especially after losing the transport ship Cedarbank to a U-boat. Whatever else had been on the Cedarbank, we now had only our rifles. A few anti-tank rifles and Bren guns to face the enemy with. Also the clothes we stood up in. Holland 199. The British perform badly in their first direct clash with German ground forces of the war. On April 23rd, German armor overruns a British roadblock near Lillehammer, while Stuka dive bombers strike freely. Within days, German fighters destroy the entire contingent of British biplanes sent to aid the expedition. By April 24th, Britain decides to withdraw from Trondheim. General Edmund Ironside notes grimly, "I have now issued the orders for the eventual evacuation of the Central Norway force." Ministers, including the Prime Minister, began making up stories they could tell the public. I dare say they will make a story that can pass muster. The thing that troubles me is that we have not taken the French into account. Petrau, 88. As Allied forces pull out of Trondheim, a separate expedition advances toward Narvik, where success still seems possible. The German commander there, General Eduard Dietl, considers withdrawal. He has roughly 4,600 men, half of them sailors fighting as improvised infantry. Yet he receives reinforcements via Ju-52 transport planes, mountain guns, supplies, and technical experts arriving through neutral Sweden. British forces remain hesitant, advancing only 8 kilometers north of Narvik in 2 weeks due to poor weather and lack of initiative. By late April and early May, however, French and Polish Alpine troops arrive, tipping the balance. By late May, German troops are exhausted, facing 25,000 Allied soldiers. On May 28, the Allies launch their final assault and capture Narvik after a brief battle. Dietl and his men retreat toward Sweden. The Allies achieve their first land victory over Germany, but it is fleeting. Within days, news from France changes everything. By June 8, the Allies evacuate Norway, allowing Dietl to reoccupy Narvik. King Haakon VII and his government flee with Allied forces, while Rugge remains behind and surrenders with the last Norwegian troops on June 10, 1940. The Norwegian campaign costs Germany about 5,300 casualties, including 2,375 at sea. Allied and Norwegian losses total around 6,600, roughly 2,500 at sea. Germany hails Operation Weserübung as a strategic triumph, thwarting Allied access to Swedish iron ore and securing vital naval bases in the North Sea. Yet Allied hesitation had squandered opportunities for a more decisive outcome, such as faster counterlandings against isolated German units. Hitler himself later admitted that he had considered withdrawing from Trondheim and Narvik several times, remarking, "From a military point of view, it can only be described as frivolous dilettantism." Petrov, 98. But was Weserübung worth it for Germany? Though the campaign's ground losses were light, it effectively crippled the Kriegsmarine for the rest of the war. Alongside the Blücher and 10 Narvik destroyers, Germany lost 2 light cruisers, 6 U-boats, and about 10% of its transport fleet, reducing naval capability severely. The Royal Navy suffered too, including the carrier HMS Glorious during the final evacuation, but Britain could absorb the losses. Larger German ships, such as Gneisenau and Scharnhorst, also required long repairs after clashing with HMS Renown on April 9th. In the long run, the German occupation of Norway demanded 300,000 troops, an enormous garrison for a secondary front. Meanwhile, iron ore exports from Narvik dwindled to almost nothing. Still, Hitler was unconcerned. He viewed navies as tools for long global wars, and he intended to fight a short, decisive one in Europe. Victory in Norway added to the illusion of unstoppable German power and reinforced Hitler's faith in bold, risky strikes. As Allied troops evacuated Norway in late May, they already knew Hitler's next great gamble was underway, one that would render Norway's ports irrelevant and might decide the war itself, the invasion of France. Less than 5 years later, the tide had reversed completely. American, British, and Free French troops were crossing the German border and advancing toward the Rhine, while the Red Army approached the Oder, preparing to storm Berlin, where Hitler awaited the end in his bunker. If you're interested in these final weeks of the Second World War, often overlooked in mainstream documentaries, check out our detailed series Rhineland 45 and 16 Days in Berlin. Both feature expert interviews, animated maps, and on-location filming. These full-length documentaries are available exclusively on Nebula, a creator-owned streaming platform that supports independent history content without ads or algorithmic pressure. You can watch them in 4K resolution on any device, including smart TVs and Apple TV. Visit nebula.tv real-time history to access Rhineland 45, 16 Days in Berlin, Red Adams, and other historical series for just $36 per year, or get a lifetime membership for unlimited access while supporting new productions directly. The events of Norway 1940 intertwined with the Winter War and the Battle of the Atlantic. To explore these chapters, see our previous episodes and sources linked below. I'm Jesse Alexander, and this is a production of Real-Time History, the only history channel that still knows exactly where the Altmark is, about 140 kilometers in that direction.